Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Leela's life was turned upside down after an accident left her temporarily disabled, but it led her to Jonathan McAllister, a reclusive millionaire in need of care. As their bond deepens, Leela's past resurfaces, uncovering secrets that threaten everything she's built. Together they must confront their darkest fears and find strength in each other. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest stories. Leela had always been a strong woman, independent, resourceful, and deeply compassionate. She worked tirelessly at a small local charity, helping those in need, and her life was built around the idea of kindness and service. But even she had moments where she questioned herself. The past year had been a roller coaster ride, one that tested her physically, emotionally, and mentally. It started with an unexpected accident. Leela had been at a local charity event when she tripped on a loose step. In a flash, her world had shifted. A broken ankle turned into months of recovery, forcing her into temporary disability. For a woman used to standing tall and helping others, being unable to even walk without crutches was a blow to her spirit. But even in her time of need, Leela's heart never wavered from her mission of helping others. That's when she met Mr. Jonathan McAllister, the millionaire. Jonathan was a recluse, having built his wealth through a number of successful ventures. But he had recently become known for something unexpected: his need for assistance. Jonathan had suffered a debilitating stroke that left him partially paralyzed, unable to perform even the simplest of tasks. His house was a mansion, but it might as well have been a prison to him. His staff came and went, but none of them stayed long enough to make a lasting difference in his life. Jonathan was lonely, and his wealth seemed meaningless in the face of his struggles. One afternoon, when Leela was still recovering from her injury, she received a call from her charity. They were in desperate need of someone to assist Jonathan McAllister, as all the other caregivers had quit. Initially, Leela hesitated. She wasn't sure she was ready to take on the responsibility, especially with her own struggles still fresh. But her compassion won out. She knew that if someone didn't step up, Jonathan might end up more isolated than he already was, and so, with a mixture of trepidation and determination, she agreed to take the job. On her first day at Jonathan's mansion, Leela was taken aback by the grandeur of the place. The marble floors, the towering windows, the priceless artwork hanging on the walls, it was all overwhelming. But when she met Jonathan, she quickly realized that the man behind the wealth was nothing like the life he led. He was kind, but his eyes were sad, weary from years of solitude. His pride, once a shield, was now a burden. "Hello, Leela," Jonathan said in a raspy voice, extending a hand to her as he sat in his custom-built wheelchair. "Thank you for coming." Leela smiled gently, noticing how hard it was for him to keep his posture straight. "It's no trouble, Mr. McAllister," she replied, trying to ease the tension in the air. "I'm here to help in any way I can." That first week was challenging. Jonathan's condition meant that he needed help with everything: eating, bathing, dressing, even moving from one place to another. Leela, still limping on crutches, found herself in an unusual position, having to help someone in ways that made her feel vulnerable as well. She had to learn patience, something she thought she had already mastered. There were moments when she felt exhausted physically and emotionally, but each time she looked into Jonathan's eyes, she saw a flicker of hope. He was struggling, yes, but he was trying. One afternoon, as Leela was helping Jonathan with his routine, she noticed that his face tightened as she moved him from his wheelchair to the recliner. His body, once strong and commanding, now seemed like a shell of what it had been. He struggled to breathe through the pain, his hands gripping the armrests tightly. "Mr. McAllister, are you all right?" Leela asked, her concern growing. Jonathan let out a pained sigh, shaking his head slightly. I don't want to be a burden, but I need help." Leela smiled softly. "It's okay, I'm here, let me help you." As she carefully adjusted him in the chair, she noticed a small tear at the corner of his eye. It was then that Leela understood. Jonathan wasn't just mourning his physical limitations. He was mourning the life he used to have, the man he used to be. For weeks, their routine continued. Leela helped Jonathan with his daily tasks, but more than that, she provided him with a much-needed sense of human connection. They would talk for hours, sharing stories of their pasts, their dreams, and even their fears. The bond that grew between them wasn't just one of caregiver and patient, it was one of mutual respect, kindness, and understanding. They weren't just helping each other, they were healing. But Leela didn't just help Jonathan with his physical needs, she also helped him regain something that money couldn't buy: his sense of self-worth. She didn't treat him like an invalid or a millionaire in need of pity. Instead, she treated him like a human being, showing him the respect he had long since forgotten. One day, as Leela was helping Jonathan with a task that was particularly difficult for him, changing his clothes, he looked up at her with a mixture of vulnerability and gratitude. He had never expected to be in this position, dependent on someone else for something so intimate, so personal. "I never imagined I'd be in a situation like this," Jonathan admitted quietly. "Changing my diapers. It's humiliating." Lila paused, her heart aching for him. "It's not humiliating," she said gently. "You're still Jonathan McAllister. You are a person, not defined by your circumstances, but by your heart." Tears welled up in Jonathan's eyes as he stared at her. "You've been so kind to me, Lila. You've shown me compassion when I thought I had lost it all. You've made me feel human again." Lila didn't know how to respond, but she didn't need to. She simply held his gaze, offering him a smile that spoke volumes. But it wasn't just the physical care she provided that touched Jonathan, it was her unwavering kindness. There were moments when Jonathan would express his frustrations with his condition, or when he would lash out in anger at the helplessness he felt. But Lila never backed down. She always showed him the same calm, understanding demeanor. She would listen, she would comfort, and most importantly, she would never judge him. As the weeks went by, Jonathan began to change. He started to see himself through Leela's eyes, not as a broken man, but as someone worthy of love, respect, and care. The more time they spent together, the more Jonathan's confidence grew. He was still physically impaired, but he started to embrace the man he was now, someone who could still make a difference, still be kind, still show the world the depth of his soul. But what Lila didn't expect was that her own heart would begin to change as well. She had always been focused on helping others, but she had never truly allowed herself to receive help. Jonathan's vulnerability had opened her heart in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had spent so many years caring for others, but now she realized that, sometimes, she needed to let someone care for her too. And Jonathan, in his own way, had shown her that she didn't always have to be the strong one. It was okay to be vulnerable. One evening, after an especially challenging day, Jonathan looked at Leela and said, "You've given me more than I could ever give you. You've shown me kindness when I didn't deserve it, and you've been a friend when I had none. I'll never forget that." Leela smiled, a soft tear slipping down her cheek. "You don't need to thank me, Jonathan. It's what we do for each other. That's what matters. You've taught me that love isn't about what we can give, it's about showing up, even when it's hard." They sat there, in silence, knowing that their lives had been changed. What had started as a caregiving situation had blossomed into something deeper, a bond forged in kindness, compassion, and a shared understanding that no matter what life throws at them, they would always have each other. And so, as the months passed, Leela and Jonathan's relationship continued to grow. Not only had Leela changed Jonathan's life by offering him care and compassion when he thought all was lost, but he had also changed hers by reminding her of the importance of love and vulnerability. What the world had mocked and belittled as a woman caring for a disabled millionaire had, in the end, become something far more profounder, love built on the foundation of kindness, respect, and compassion. They had learned, together, that true strength isn't in the ability to stand tall, but in the willingness to be there for one another when the world feels like it's falling apart. And in the quiet moments of their lives, they found joy in the knowledge that they had both healed and become better versions of themselves because of each other. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Leela and Jonathan only deepened. What had started as an act of compassion had blossomed into something far more profound. Each day, as Leela helped Jonathan with his personal care and daily routines, she saw the layers of his once hardened exterior begin to soften. She realized that, while he was no longer the powerful man he once was, he was still a man full of depth, kindness, and insight. Jonathan, too, began to see Leela not just as a caregiver but as someone who had transformed his world. Her constant presence brought him a sense of stability he had longed for. She treated him with dignity and respect, something he had often been denied in his wealth-fueled circle. The vulnerability they shared, the way they both leaned on each other, was something rare, something that went beyond mere dependence. It was mutual. One chilly morning, as the sun streamed through the large windows of Jonathan's living room, Leela was sitting next to him, helping him with his breakfast. The air was quiet, except for the soft sounds of birds chirping outside, and Jonathan felt an overwhelming sense of peace. He had never been one to embrace vulnerability, but with Leela he had learned that it wasn't a weakness. Instead, It was a strength, one that allowed him to truly experience connection and love. Lila, Jonathan began, his voice steady but laced with emotion, I don't know how to express how much your kindness has meant to me. You've turned my world upside down in the most beautiful way. I owe you more than words can say. Lila smiled, her heart swelling at his words, but she shook her head slightly. You don't owe me anything, Jonathan. We've both helped each other in ways we didn't expect. You've given me as much as I've given you. You've shown me what real compassion looks like, and for that, I'm incredibly grateful. Jonathan's eyes softened as he looked at her, his hand reaching out to gently squeeze hers. I think you've taught me more than I'll ever be able to teach you. I've been so focused on what I lost, but you've reminded me of everything I still have. I have you, Lila. I have someone who sees me for who I am, not for what I once had, but for who I've become, and that means everything to me. Lila felt the weight of his words, the sincerity behind them. She had come to realize that Jonathan was no longer the man he had been before his stroke, but in many ways, the new Jonathan was far more beautiful, vulnerable, open, and full of a quiet strength she admired deeply. As the weeks passed, their relationship shifted in ways they had not anticipated. It wasn't just about caregiving anymore, it was about companionship, about creating a life together, one that was filled with love, respect, and tenderness. Jonathan's health had improved slowly, and although he still required assistance, there was a noticeable shift in his attitude. He became more active, more involved in decisions, and more willing to embrace the life that had been handed to him. One afternoon, as the golden sunlight bathed the garden, Jonathan invited Lila outside to enjoy the view. His wheelchair had been modified to allow him more mobility, and they sat together in the garden, enjoying the peace that surrounded them. The flowers were in full bloom, and the scent of roses filled the air. Do you remember when I first started coming here? Lila asked, looking around at the beautiful garden that had been the backdrop to so many of their conversations. Jonathan chuckled softly. How could I forget? I was a mess, a stubborn old man who thought he could handle everything on his own. He paused, his voice growing serious. But I never realized how much I needed you until you walked into my life. Lila, you brought light into a place I thought was beyond saving. And now, look at us. Look at how far we've come. Lila's eyes glistened with emotion. We've come a long way, she said softly. But we've done it together, Jonathan. And that's what matters. We've both changed in ways I never thought were possible. Jonathan turned his gaze toward her, his expression filled with love and admiration. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Lila, not because I need someone to take care of me, but because I need your heart, your kindness, and everything that makes you who you are. I don't want to imagine a future without you in it. Lila's heart raced at his words, and she knew, in that moment, that the love they shared was not just about helping each other through difficult times, it was about a deep connection that transcended everything else. She had been afraid of what loving someone might mean, afraid that her vulnerability would make her weak. But Jonathan had shown her that love was not something to fear, it was something to embrace. I want that too, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I want a future with you, Jonathan, a future built on love, kindness, and everything we've shared. As they sat together in the garden, hands intertwined, they both knew that the road ahead would have its challenges, but they also knew that together they could face anything. What had started as an unexpected bond had transformed into a love that was strong, unshakable, and beautiful. The following months were filled with more moments of joy, more shared laughter, and more tenderness. Jonathan, once isolated in his own world of wealth and pride, had found someone who truly saw him, and Lila, who had always been self-reliant, had found someone who made her feel loved in a way she never thought possible. They were building a future together, one day at a time, one evening. As the sky grew dark and the stars began to twinkle, Jonathan surprised Lila with a small dinner in the garden. He had arranged everything, the soft lighting, the candles, the delicious food. It was a simple evening, but to them, it was everything. It was a celebration of their love, their journey, and the life they had built together. As they finished their meal, Jonathan took Lila's hand and looked at her with a smile that spoke volumes. I know I've said this before, but I want to say it again, Jonathan said, his voice soft but steady. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've given me. You've shown me that love doesn't come with conditions. It comes with acceptance, trust, and the willingness to be there for each other through thick and thin. You've made me a better man, Lila. Tears welled up in Lila's eyes as she looked at him, her heart full of gratitude and love. You've made me a better woman, Jonathan. I've learned that love isn't about giving everything for the other person. It's about sharing your life, your heart, and your vulnerabilities. And I'm so glad I get to do that with you. As they sat in the quiet of the evening, holding each other close, Lila realized that the love they had was a rare and beautiful thing. It wasn't built on superficial ideals or fleeting passions, was built on the foundation of kindness, compassion, and unwavering support. And that love, the one that had blossomed through the most unexpected of circumstances, would carry them through whatever came next. From that moment on, Lila and Jonathan walked through life hand in hand, facing the future with open hearts and a bond that could not be broken. And though they both knew their journey was far from over, they were ready to embrace it together, with love as their guide. That as the years passed, Lila and Jonathan's life together blossomed into something deeper, more profound than either of them could have imagined. What began as an unexpected caregiving situation turned into a beautiful partnership, one rooted in mutual love, respect, and understanding. The couple had found solace in each other's arms, and each day brought them closer, not just physically, but emotionally. One of the greatest lessons they learned together was how to truly live in the present. Despite their initial fears, Jonathan's reluctance to depend on anyone and Lila's fears of becoming too emotionally invested, they had found strength in vulnerability. They learned that love wasn't just about caring for each other when things were easy. It was about showing up, day after day, and being there for one another through the small moments and the big challenges. One rainy afternoon, after a long day, Lila sat by the window of their cozy living room. The rain pattered softly against the windows, and Jonathan sat beside her, a cup of tea in his hands. They had come a long way since that first time Lila had taken care of him, and now, the atmosphere between them was filled with warmth and comfort. "I was thinking today," Lila said quietly, looking out at the rain, "about how we got here. How much we've learned from each other." Jonathan smiled, his hand finding hers. "Yeah, I've been thinking about that too. We've been through a lot, haven't we?" Lila turned to him, her gaze soft. "We have, and I think what I've learned most from you is how to be open, how to let go of control and trust. You've shown me that love isn't about perfection, it's about being there for each other, even in our messiest moments." Jonathan's voice dropped to a whisper, his words filled with emotion. "You've taught me the same, Lila. Before you, I didn't know what it meant to really open up, to show someone my vulnerabilities. I've spent so much of my life protecting myself from the world, but you made me realize that there's nothing more powerful than letting yourself love and be loved." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes as she squeezed his hand gently. She had never imagined that her own strength would find such a beautiful complement in Jonathan, and she was amazed by how he had changed, not just physically, but emotionally. He was no longer the man who hid behind his wealth and pride. He was a man who had learned to embrace love, to embrace life. "Thank you for showing me that love isn't something I need to earn," Lila said softly. "You've given me the greatest gift, the ability to just be." Jonathan's eyes darkened with emotion. "I'm the one who should be thanking you. You've given me more than I ever thought I deserved. I've spent so much of my life in a bubble of self-importance, and then you came along so selfless, so full of kindness. You've brought me peace, Lila." They sat there in comfortable silence, the only sound the soft ticking of the clock and the gentle rain outside. The years that had passed between them didn't seem so long anymore. What once felt like a fragile connection had turned into something deep and sturdy, built on the foundation of love, patience, and understanding. As they both sat together, Jonathan turned toward Lila, his eyes glimmering with affection. "You know, there's something I've been wanting to ask you for a while now, Lila," he said, his voice low but steady. Lila looked up at him curiously. "What is it?" Jonathan paused, searching her face before continuing. "I've been thinking about our future. We've been through so much together, and I want to continue building that future with you. So, I need to ask, will you marry me, Lila? Will you be by my side forever, through everything?" Lila's breath caught in her throat as the words sank in. She hadn't expected this moment to come so soon, but in her heart she knew this was what she wanted. Jonathan had shown her what true partnership looked like, and there was no one else she would want to spend her life with. With tears in her eyes, she smiled and said, "Yes, yes, Jonathan, I will. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Jonathan's face lit up with pure joy as he took her hand in both of his, holding it to his chest. "You've made me the happiest man alive, Lila." As he leaned in to kiss her, Lila felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had never imagined that life could bring her this kind of happiness, this kind of fulfillment. Together they had built a love that was stronger than anything they had known before. In the following months they began to plan their wedding. It wasn't a lavish affair, but it was filled with love and meaning. They invited close friends and family, and the ceremony was small and intimate, just as they had envisioned. The day they said their vows to each other was a beautiful celebration of the life they had built together during their honeymoon, a quiet retreat to a cabin by the lake. They spent their days walking hand in hand, talking about the future, and making plans for the life they would continue to build. It was a time of renewal and reflection, and they both knew that their love was only just beginning to blossom back home. Life returned to its routine, but the bond they shared never wavered. They continued to support each other through life's ups and downs, and each day seemed to bring new reasons for them to love each other more. They made a home for themselves, filled with laughter, warmth, and the occasional quiet moments when they simply held each other. One evening, as they sat together in front of the fireplace, Leela looked at Jonathan, her heart overflowing with gratitude. "Do you remember when we first met?" she asked softly. Jonathan chuckled. "How could I forget? You walked into my life, and everything changed." Leela smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I never thought that a simple act of kindness would lead me here, but I'm so grateful it did. I've never felt more at home in my life." Jonathan wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. "I feel the same way. We've built something beautiful, Lila, something I never thought possible. But I know that as long as we're together, we'll keep building it, one day at a time." As the years continued to pass, Leela and Jonathan's love only grew stronger. They had learned that love wasn't just about the big moments, it was about the quiet, everyday moments of kindness and compassion. It was about building a life together, side by side, and cherishing every step of the journey. And so, they continued to walk through life, hand in hand, facing every challenge with love and grace, knowing that together, they could conquer anything. The love they had built was a testament to the power of kindness, compassion, and the deep connection that can flourish when two people choose each other. Every single day, years into their marriage, Lila and Jonathan's life together felt like a beautiful dream. Their connection was strong, rooted in love, trust, and mutual respect. They had built a life full of laughter, travel, and quiet evenings by the fire. But as often happens, life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges at even the most solid of foundations. One autumn evening, Jonathan came home earlier than usual. Leela was sitting in their living room, reading a book by the firelight. She looked up as he walked in, noticing the unusual tension in his expression. His usual easy smile was replaced with a furrowed brow, and he carried himself differently, more burdened. "Jonathan, is everything all right?" Leela asked, setting her book down. Jonathan hesitated before speaking, running a hand through his hair. "Leela, there's something I need to tell you." His voice was strained, and she immediately stood up, sensing that something was wrong. She stepped closer to him, her concern growing. "What is it? You're scaring me." Jonathan took a deep breath, his eyes avoiding hers for a moment before he met her gaze. "I've been hiding something from you," he said quietly. "Something I never meant to keep from you, but I didn't know how to tell you." Lila's heart began to race. She could see the weight of his words hanging in the air, heavy and full of meaning. "What is it, Jonathan?" He swallowed hard, his voice trembling slightly. "Before I met you, I was involved in some shady business dealings. I was working with people I shouldn't have been, and one of them came back into my life recently. They've been threatening me, Lila, and by extension, you, too." Lila felt her knees go weak as she processed his words. She had always known that Jonathan's past wasn't as straightforward as it seemed, but hearing him admit it so plainly shook her to her core. She stepped back, her mind racing with questions. "What do you mean, threatening you? And why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to bring that part of my life into ours," Jonathan explained, his voice filled with regret. "But now, I can't keep it from you any longer. They want me to make a deal with them. If I don't they'll go after you." Leela's breath caught in her throat as the implications of his words hit her. This was not just about Jonathan anymore. This was about her too, about their future. The life they had carefully crafted together could be in jeopardy. "Who are they?" Lila asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jonathan shook his head. "I don't know. They've been anonymous so far, but they know everything about me and, now, about you." He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe, Lila, I swear it." Lila's heart pounded as she looked into his eyes. The man she had married, the one who had changed so much in the years since they'd first met, was now facing a dangerous past that she had never fully known about. She knew Jonathan was a good man at his core, but his past, the one he had kept hidden from her, threatened to unravel everything. "I'm not going anywhere, Jonathan. We'll face this together," Lila said firmly, her hands gripping his with determination. I love you. And no matter what, we'll handle this together. Jonathan looked at her, surprised by her strength. I don't deserve your trust after hiding this from you. Stop, Lila interrupted, placing her hand gently on his cheek. We've built a life together, Jonathan. Whatever comes our way, we'll figure it out. We always do. He stared at her for a long moment, his eyes full of love and admiration. You're the strongest woman I know, he whispered. But as they stood together in that moment, making promises to face the unknown, neither of them knew just how much their lives were about to change. Days passed, and the threats became more insistent. Anonymous letters arrived at their home, each one more menacing than the last. The fear that had once been confined to Jonathan's past was now spilling over into their present. Lila had always thought of herself as a strong, independent woman, but this was something different. This was a situation beyond anything she had ever prepared for. One night, as they sat at the dinner table, the phone rang, and the caller ID showed an unknown number. Lila's pulse quickened as she stared at the screen. Jonathan had already explained that these calls were probably from the same people who had been sending the letters. The fear in his eyes made it clear that they both understood the stakes. Don't answer it, Lila said softly, already standing up to leave the room. But Jonathan stood quickly, his hand on her arm. No, he said, his voice firm. I have to. This is the only way we'll get answers. Reluctantly, Lila stepped back, her stomach tightening as Jonathan picked up the phone. His voice was calm but strained as he spoke, listening intently to whoever was on the other end, and then, suddenly, everything shifted. Jonathan's face drained of color as he listened. He turned pale, and his grip on the phone tightened, his knuckles white. What do you mean? You've been watching us, he asked, his voice barely audible. Lila stepped forward, her breath caught in her throat. What's happening? She asked, fear creeping into her voice. Jonathan's eyes met hers, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something darker in his gaze. He motioned for her to sit down, his hands trembling. Lila, the people who've been threatening us, they've been closer than we thought. Lila's heart raced as he spoke, piecing the pieces of the puzzle together. They're right here, she whispered. As the horrifying truth began to sink in, the phone call ended abruptly, and Jonathan set the receiver down with a heavy thud. They've been watching our every move. They've been in the house before. They knew everything about us, Lila. Lila's breath caught in her chest as the full weight of the situation hit her. She had thought the danger was just a shadow of the past, but it was now here, in their home, invading their lives, in ways she hadn't expected. Who is it, Jonathan? Lila asked, her voice a whisper. Who is trying to tear us apart? Jonathan closed his eyes, unable to answer, and just when it seemed like the walls were closing in, Lila's phone rang. This time, the voice on the other end was a familiar voice she hadn't heard in years. A voice that she had tried so hard to forget. It was her own mother, and with that, everything took a turn. Lila had always thought she knew everything about her past, everything about Jonathan's secret. But now her mother's voice was the key to something far deeper than she could have imagined. It turned out the people threatening Jonathan were connected to her own family. A part of her past she had worked so hard to bury. As Lila took in the shocking truth. She knew one thing, they weren't just fighting for their lives anymore, were fighting for the future they had built together, and as the twists of their story unraveled, they realized that no matter how deep the secrets ran, no matter how tangled the web became, their love for each other would be the force that kept them grounded through every challenge, every fear, and every dark moment they had yet to face. Together they could overcome anything. As the weight of the revelations settled between them, Lila's mind raced. Her mother's voice on the phone had sent a chill down her spine, but she couldn't ignore the storm of emotions swirling in her chest. She had spent years trying to distance herself from her past, burying parts of it deep within her. But now, it seemed like the past was refusing to stay buried, that her mother's words had been cryptic, full of half-truths and evasions. But Lila understood one thing. Her family's past was tangled up in this mess. The people threatening Jonathan had ties to her own bloodline connections that ran deeper than she could have ever imagined. Her heart sank as she realized that the very family she had tried to escape from was now poised to destroy everything she had built with Jonathan. What did she say, Lila? Jonathan asked, his voice full of concern but edged with apprehension. He could see the strain on her face, the way her eyes darted to places he couldn't follow. Lila shook her head slowly, her breath shallow. She said the people threatening us are part of a syndicate that my father used to be involved with. A syndicate I thought I left behind when I moved away. They've been watching us for months, Jonathan, and now they know everything about us. About you, about me, even about our plans for the future. Jonathan's face darkened, the weight of what she was saying slowly sinking in. He stepped closer to her, reaching out to take her hands in his. We'll figure this out, Lila. You don't have to carry this alone. Whatever they know, whatever they want, we will face it together. We're stronger than this. But Lila felt a knot tightening in her chest. I don't know if I can trust myself anymore, she whispered, looking at Jonathan with a mix of guilt and fear. How could I not have seen this coming? How could I have let the past slip through the cracks? Jonathan's thumb gently brushed over her knuckles, trying to soothe her as best as he could. You don't need to carry that burden. We all have things we try to forget, things we wish we could change. What matters is that we're here now, together, and whatever we face, we will face it together. As Jonathan spoke, Lila found a flicker of comfort in his words, a sense of grounding that she hadn't felt since the storm of revelations began. He was right. They were in this together. And as much as the past was trying to claw its way back into their lives, it couldn't break what they had now. But the danger wasn't over. The threats escalated over the next few days as Lila and Jonathan started to uncover more about the syndicate's reach. Mysterious figures appeared on their street at odd hours, and phone calls were made, only to end in silence. Lila's heart raced with every unexpected knock on the door. And Jonathan had started taking extra precautions with his business dealings, unsure who could be trusted, but the situation was getting worse. But Lila refused to let fear dictate her life. Every time the darkness tried to break through, she focused on what mattered most: the love they shared, the bond they had forged despite all the odds. One night, after another close call when a threatening message had been left at their doorstep, Lila sat down on their living room couch, staring at the floor, her mind overwhelmed by the weight of it all. She felt Jonathan sit down next to her, his presence both a comfort and a reminder that everything was on the line. Lila, Jonathan began softly, his voice full of quiet resolve. We've been through a lot together, and no matter what comes next, I will protect you, I promise you that. But we need to make some decisions. We need to figure out how to take control of this. Lila looked up at him, her eyes filled with the tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed. I don't want to live in fear, Jonathan, she said, her voice trembling. I've been running from my past for so long, and now it's like the past is swallowing us whole. Jonathan took her hand and pulled her closer, holding her tightly. You don't have to run anymore, he whispered, and you don't have to face it alone. We will find a way through this. I'm not going anywhere. I need you to believe that, Lila. You're my everything. For the first time in days, Lila allowed herself to fully relax into his embrace, feeling the warmth of his words seep into her heart. There was something unshakable about their bond, a love that had already weathered so many storms. As the world around them seemed to crumble, their connection remained a constant, and Lila realized that this was what truly mattered. But just as they were starting to find solace in each other's arms, the next twist came: a discovery that none of them could have anticipated. The very family member Lila had tried to distance herself from, the mother who had played such a cryptic part in the threats, was not who she seemed to be. Lila discovered, through a source of her own, that her mother had been acting as a double agent. She had been working with the syndicate all along, and her actions were part of a larger scheme to manipulate both Lila and Jonathan. Lila felt betrayed, more deeply than she ever had before. The woman she had trusted, the woman who was supposed to protect her, had been orchestrating their downfall from behind the scenes. As the truth began to surface, Jonathan and Lila faced their biggest challenge. Yet, not only were they battling against an external enemy, but they were also fighting against the deception that had been woven into the fabric of Lila's past. It wasn't just about protecting their love, it was about reclaiming their trust in each other and understanding who they were now, as a couple, in the face of this devastating truth. But despite the deep betrayal, Lila found the strength to face her mother. With Jonathan by her side, she confronted the woman who had hidden her involvement with the syndicate for years, revealing the lies and the manipulation. It was a conversation that shattered all illusions, but it also marked the beginning of Lila's freedom from the past, freedom from the chains that had held her down for so long. Done in the end. Their battle against the syndicate wasn't just about survival, it was about choosing to rebuild their lives together, stronger than ever. They had faced the darkest of moments, and despite the lies, the betrayal, and the challenges, their love had only grown deeper. Jonathan, with Lila's help, took decisive steps to sever ties with the syndicate once and for all. They rebuilt their foundation, brick by brick, each choice solidifying their resolve to create a future together, one based on truth, loyalty, and love. Months later, as they stood together, looking at the life they had forged, Leela knew one thing. The past would never fully leave them, but as long as they were together, they could handle anything. Their love had survived the storm, and now, they were ready to embrace the calm. Months passed, and the dust slowly settled from the chaotic storm that had threatened to tear everything apart. Leela and Jonathan had done the hard work and the webs of deceit and betrayal, cleaning up the remnants of their family's dark dealings. With every challenge they faced, their bond only grew stronger. But even after the dust settled, a part of Leela felt an unshakable sense of unease, like she was still trying to outrun the ghosts of her past. Jonathan, ever the steady force in her life, noticed the change in her. The vibrant woman who had once radiated joy now seemed a bit withdrawn at times, as though she was quietly processing everything that had transpired. He was always there, offering his support, but he could sense that there was still something unspoken between them, something Leela hadn't fully confronted. One evening, after dinner, as they sat on the couch, their fingers entwined, Jonathan turned to her, his eyes filled with concern. "Leela," he began softly, "we've been through so much together. I know it hasn't been easy for you, but I need you to know I'm here for you, always. You don't have to carry the weight of everything by yourself." Leela turned to him, her heart swelling at his words, but even with all the love between them, she felt a lingering sense of heaviness she couldn't shake. "I don't know if I'm ready to let go of the past," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are days when it still feels like it's suffocating me. The betrayal, the lies, and, worst of all, that I didn't see it sooner. I was so blinded by everything that I couldn't even protect myself, let alone you." Jonathan's grip tightened around her hand, pulling her closer. "Leela, you don't have to protect anyone anymore. You're not alone in this. We've built something incredible together, and together we can face whatever comes our way. The past doesn't define you not anymore. What defines you now is the strength you've shown, the love you've given, and the life we're building together." His words were like a balm to her heart, soothing the ache she hadn't known how to address. But still the question lingered. She truly moved forward, or would the past always have a hold on her? The next few days were filled with quiet reflection. Leela spent time walking through the park near their home, her thoughts turning inward, trying to reconcile everything she had been through. She needed to find a way to heal, to let go, but she knew it wasn't something that could happen overnight. It was a journey, a process of accepting the parts of herself she had long buried. One morning, while sitting at the cafe with Jonathan, a couple of weeks after their heartfelt conversation, Leela finally found the courage to voice her biggest fear. "What if I can never truly let go of the past?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What if it always follows me around, no matter how hard I try to escape it?" Jonathan looked at her, his eyes soft and understanding. "Leela, the past can't be erased, but it also doesn't have to control you. What matters is what we do with today and how we shape our future. You don't need to carry all that weight by yourself anymore. Let me carry some of it for you. We're in this together." Tears welled up in Leela's eyes. His words pierced through the walls she had built around her heart. And for the first time in a long while, she felt the walls begin to crumble. She had spent so many years running from the past, refusing to acknowledge the wounds it had left. But in Jonathan's arms, she realized that healing didn't mean forgetting it, meant accepting and moving forward. As the days turned into weeks, Leela and Jonathan continued to build their life. They focused on the present, on the joy of being together, on making new memories, and on cherishing each other's company. With each passing day, Leela's fears began to dissipate. The weight that had once seemed insurmountable became lighter, softened by the love and support Jonathan had always offered her. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Leela turned to Jonathan, a peaceful smile on her face. "I don't know how you do it," she said softly. "How you make me feel so safe, so loved. You've given me more than I ever imagined possible." Jonathan took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "Leela, you've always been strong, even when you didn't realize it. I just want to be the one to remind you of that, and I'll keep reminding you every single day. You deserve to feel free, to feel whole, and to know that I'm right here with you." Leela leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't carrying the burden of her past alone. The love between them was a refuge, a sanctuary, from everything that had tried to tear them apart. But just when they thought the storm had passed, the unthinkable happened. A letter arrived at their doorstep, an unexpected reminder of everything they had tried to leave behind. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was from her mother. Lila's breath caught in her throat as she opened the letter, her heart racing. It was short, cryptic words that seemed to haunt her. I'm sorry for what I've done. I should have told you the truth. But there's something you need to know. Your father is still alive. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Lila read the words over and over. Jonathan reached over, placing his hand on hers, sensing the shift in her energy. Lila, what does it mean? What does she mean? Tears blurred her vision as she tried to comprehend the weight of her mother's words. It can't be. My father. I thought he was gone, that he had died years ago. How is he alive? Jonathan held her close, trying to absorb the shock of the revelation. This was more than just a surprise. It was a bombshell, something that would change everything. Do you want to find him? Jonathan asked gently, his voice steady but filled with concern. Do you want to know the truth? Lila closed her eyes, feeling the storm within her rise again. She didn't know if she was ready for this. Was she ready to face the man who had once been a part of her life, a part of her past she had long buried? And what would it mean for her and Jonathan if she did? I don't know, she whispered, feeling lost in the uncertainty. But I can't just let it go. Not now. Not after everything we've been through. Jonathan kissed her forehead gently. Then we'll face it together. Whatever it takes, we'll face it together. Lila nodded, the weight of her decision settling on her shoulders. She knew that this wasn't just about seeking answers, it was about understanding her own journey, reclaiming the parts of herself she had long suppressed, and whatever it took, she knew she wouldn't face it alone. With Jonathan by her side, Lila was ready to face the past once again. And this time, she would do it with the strength and love they had built together, stronger than before, ready for whatever lay ahead. The days that followed were a blur for Lila. The letter from her mother had ignited something in her that she hadn't expected, an unsettling curiosity, a desperate need to know the truth about her father. The person she had once known, or perhaps only thought she knew, was suddenly a phantom again. The truth about him and about her mother's betrayal was something she wasn't sure she was ready to confront. Jonathan, as always, stood by her side, his presence unwavering in the storm of her emotions. He knew that this journey was hers to take, but he also knew that he couldn't let her walk it alone. He'd seen Lila face challenges before, but this was different. This was a wound from her past that had been festering for years, and now it had reopened in the most shocking way possible. One evening, as they sat on their couch together, Lila turned to Jonathan, her expression grave. I need to do this, she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. I need to find him. I need to know the truth. Jonathan nodded, his hand resting gently on hers. Then we'll find the answers together. Lila, whatever happens, we'll do it together. Her heart swelled with gratitude. She had never known a love like Jonathan's, a love that was patient, understanding, and unyielding in the face of all the unknowns. But even with him by her side, the road ahead was uncertain. Lila took a deep breath, then made the call. Her mother's voice came, on the other end of the line, laced with the same tone of mystery, but now something else. Something far more urgent. Lila, her mother began, her voice soft yet cold. I never wanted you to know this way. I never wanted you to find out like this. But you must know the truth. Your father, he's been watching you. He's been watching both of you. Lila's stomach dropped as she sat there, Jonathan holding her hand tightly, listening with bated breath. He's been alive this whole time, her mother continued, but he's been hiding from everyone. From me, from you, from the world. He's wanted to reach out, but he's been too afraid. Afraid of what would happen if he did. I've kept him away from you because I thought it would be safer. I thought it would protect you. Lila's head was spinning. Why didn't you tell me this before, Mum? Why did you keep this from me for so long? Her mother sighed, the sound heavy with guilt. Because he was dangerous, Lila. He wasn't who you thought he was. He's been involved in things, dangerous things. Things I couldn't tell you. But I'm telling you now because I don't want you to be caught up in his mess. He's been in the shadows for too long, and now, he's coming for you. Lila felt the weight of her mother's words like a physical blow. The man she had once thought was gone forever, the man she had built so many stories about in her mind, was alive, and he was a threat. A man who had once meant everything to her, had now become a danger, and she couldn't avoid him any longer. What do you mean coming for me, Mum? Lila's voice was shaky with fear. What does that even mean? And why didn't you warn me sooner? Her mother's tone grew more urgent, more panicked. He knows about Jonathan. He knows about everything. You need to be careful, Lila. He'll stop at nothing to get to you. And when he does, he won't hesitate to destroy anyone who gets in his way. Lila closed her eyes, a deep shudder running through her body. Jonathan, sensing her fear, moved. closer, wrapping his arms around her, grounding her in the present. "Let's go to him," Jonathan said, his voice strong, determined. "We'll go together. We won't let him tear us apart. We'll face this head on, whatever it takes." Lila looked at him, her heart swelling with love for him. The man who had stood by her side through every storm, every challenge. But even with his support, she knew that facing her father would be the most difficult thing she'd ever do. She had spent years running from him, from the man who had once been her hero, the man who had become a symbol of everything she feared. "Are you sure?" she asked him, her voice barely above a whisper. "This could destroy everything, Jonathan. It could destroy us." Jonathan smiled gently, his eyes soft. "Lila, we've already been through the worst. We're not going to let anything tear us apart. Whatever happens, we'll be stronger for it." She nodded, taking a deep breath. "All right, we'll go to him. We'll find the truth." And so they set off on the long journey to find her father. The drive was silent for the most part, with Lila lost in her own thoughts, her mind racing with every possible outcome. What would she say to him? What would she feel when she finally stood face to face with the man who had once been her everything? And what would Jonathan think of it all? They arrived at an old, crumbling house on the outskirts of town, the place Lila hadn't seen since she was a little girl. It looked abandoned, the windows dark, and the yard overgrown with weeds. Yet, as they stepped out of the car, Lila's pulse quickened. She could feel the weight of the past pressing down on her. With Jonathan by her side, she walked up to the door, her hands trembling. She knocked, the sound echoing in the stillness of the night. A few moments passed, and the door creaked open. There, standing in front of her, was the man she had once called Dad. He was older now, his features hardened by years of hiding, but his eyes, the eyes that had once shown her so much love, now seemed cold, distant. "Lila," he said softly, his voice rough, filled with regret. "I never wanted you to find out like this." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes as she looked at him, the emotions she had long buried flooding back. "Why, Dad? Why didn't you tell me the truth? Why didn't you trust me enough to be a part of your life?" He looked at her, guilt written across his face. "I couldn't protect you, Lila. I thought I could keep you safe by staying away, but it was a mistake. I was wrong to think you didn't deserve the truth. You always did." Jonathan stepped forward, his hand on Lila's back, offering her his quiet strength. "We're here now, and we're not leaving until we understand everything." Her father nodded, stepping aside to let them in. As they walked through the door, Lila could feel the weight of the years pressing in around them. The house was filled with memories both painful and nostalgic. Every corner seemed to hold a piece of her childhood, a piece of a life she had tried so hard to forget. For hours they talked. Her father revealed everything, the lies, the mistakes, the dangerous people he had been involved with. It was all too much to process, but Lila could see the sincerity in his eyes. He wasn't the man he had once been. He had made terrible choices, but now, he was willing to face the consequences when it was all over. Lila stood there in silence, the weight of the truth heavy on her shoulders. She looked at her father, a man who had once been a stranger to her heart, and realized something. She didn't have to forgive him, she didn't have to accept him into her life again, but she could let go of the anger, the bitterness, and the fear that had held her captive for so long. She turned to Jonathan, who had stood by her side the entire time, unwavering. "I don't know what happens next," she whispered, her voice shaky, "but I'm glad we're together. I couldn't have done this without you." Jonathan smiled gently, his hand resting on hers. "We've made it through this, and now we get to choose our future together. No more secrets, no more lies." Lila nodded, her heart full. She had found peace, not because everything was perfect, but because she had taken control of her own story. With Jonathan by her side, she knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. And for the first time in a long time, Lila felt truly free.